Good morning, folks. We are going to discuss today, I've got the learning targets out for you, and we're going to start discussing today, I can convert fractions to decimals and also decimals to fractions. So that's kind of like one learning target together. Okay, I can convert improper fractions to mixed numbers. I can multiply decimals, I can multiply fractions, and I can multiply fractions and decimals in real world settings. Now, this seems like a lot to do in one video, but these first two are definitely a review. We're just going to go over how to do that pretty quickly. And then we will also discuss the multiplying the decimals and the fractions. And we're going to have calculators with that. So you will either need a phone calculator that will do fractions and decimals, or you will need to get a TI-30X or 2S for this. Okay, I would highly recommend the calculator just because it will do everything for you, and it is K-Prep test approved, and it also would be what you would be working on in school. So these things run you about $8 to $10 in Walmart, and if you don't have one, it's very good to have one. You can use it this year, next year, and on into high school. Okay, so let's get started, and I have the first thing that we're going to talk about is the turning each decimal into a fraction, okay? And you had to watch two previous videos that were from Math Annex. The first one was the fractions and decimals number video, and the second one was converting any fraction video. Okay, so I'm hoping that you've watched these, and it kind of gives you a foundation about your base 10 numbers and how we know what place value that we should put underneath a decimal to turn it to a fraction. But if I look at this, I'm going to do a few of these for example. If I look at this, I have my decimal place here, so I know that's the number. There's a 0 here, so I know the number is a fraction or decimal less than 1. And I know that this 1 is in the hundredths place because it's 2 places behind the decimal. Okay, so if it's a hundredths place, all I have to do is put whatever the number is on top, 1 over, and then put what place value that the last number stops, 1/100th. And that is how I turn that into a fraction. That cannot be simplified, so that just stays the same. Okay, number 2, I have a whole number in the ones place, so I'm going to just put 6 here, and then in the tenths place, which is the place value right past the decimal, I have a 9, and so I'm going to write 9 tenths, and I put it over the tenths place because it is in the tenths. The fraction is the tenths place value. So my decimal goes from 9 tenths to 6 and 9 tenths. 6 and 9 tenths to 6 and 9 tenths. It's just written differently. Okay, the third one is a lot like that. We have a 2 in the ones place, so that's a big 2. And then we have an 8 in the tenths place, which is 1 place behind the decimal. So we have 2 and 8 tenths. But I look at that 8 tenths and I say, hey, that can be simplified because 8 and 10 both have a factor of 2 in them. So I can actually simplify that down by just dividing the top and the bottom by 2. And I can say 2 and 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. Okay. All right. Number 4, we have 2 places, 2 numbers, and the last number is in the hundredths place. So the way we read that is 25 hundredths. The 2 is in the tenths place. The 5 is in the hundredths place. So the last number is how we read this number. So 25 hundredths. And so all we have to do with this is put 25 over 100, and I'm going to simplify that down. Now, I know that there are 4 quarters and a dollar, and they're each worth 25 cents. So I can simplify 25 hundredths into 1/4. And if you're not sure of how to do that, you can either divide the top and bottom by 25, or you can take your calculator and you can put 25 over 100 in your calculator. Put one too many zeros. Oops, 25 ABC 100. And hit equals, and it simplifies it for you. So that's another good reason to have one of these calculators, is because it does the simplification for you. Just put it in as a fraction, use the ABC button, your fraction button, and it will simplify. Okay. Now, number 5, our 8 is not in the tenths place, it's not in the hundredths place, but it's in the thousandths place. So I'm going to put 8 over 1,000, okay? 8 over 1,000, and I know that will simplify. So it actually will simplify, divide by 8 on top and bottom, but I will show you. You're going to say 8 over 1,000. Hit equals, and you get 1 over 125. Okay. Let's do one more of these. I'm going to do number 7. I have the whole number 1, and then I have 75, and it's over 100 because the 5 is in the hundredths place. And 75 hundredths simplifies down to be 3/4 because there are 75 cents is 3/4 out of 4/4, which is $1 or 100 pennies. Okay. And that is how you turn a fraction or a decimal into a fraction. You first write it in the base 10 fraction form, and then you simplify if necessary from there. Okay, so let's talk about turning a fraction into a decimal. Sorry, I keep getting my words mixed up. All right, so we have the fraction 3/5. Okay, now you can either do long division, which is a whole skill that you were supposed to learn in 6th grade, and that's where you put the top number on the bottom and the bottom number out to the side. Put that under the divisor. You put a decimal, add a 0, and you can say how many times will 5 go into 30, which is 6 times. And that was an easy one because you have 0.6 or 6/10. Okay, that is an easy one. Not all of these are as easy. Okay, so I am going to allow you to use a calculator for this, and I'm going to show you how to use the calculator since we're at home, we're going to do the calculator. Excuse me. If you have 1/3, if you have 1/3, then all you have to do in the calculator is put the top number in first, 1, divided by 3. See how on the calculator it looks like the fraction? The top number always goes in first. When I hit equals, I get a repeating decimal of 0.3 repeating. So I'm going to put a 0, a 3, and I'm going to put a line above the 3 that shows that this repeats 0.333 because 0.3, just 0, is different than 0.3333333. That is how you know it's a repeating decimal. Again, for number 13, 7/8. The top number goes in first. A lot of you guys are going to think that you put 8 divided by 7, but that is not how you type a fraction into a calculator. The top number always goes in first. So 7 divided by 8, it should look like, when you put it in, it should look like it's the number that's on the paper. Okay, hit equals, and you get 875 thousandths. So you can put 0.875. Now I'll give you a piece of advice on how would I know if I put it in wrong. Okay, so 7/8 is a fraction less than 1 because in order to have a fraction that's equal to 1, you have to have 8 over 8, or anything over itself is equal to 1, right? So theoretically, anything that has a top number that's less than the bottom number is less than 1. And when I put it into the decimal or the fraction to the calculator and I get a decimal, my decimal is also less than 1 because there's no 1 or no number in the ones place. So I know that this 875 thousandths is less than 1 whole. So if I was to put it in wrong, if I was to put 8 divided by 7 in, then my top number would be bigger than my bottom number. And when I divide it, I get 1.14287 and so on. And I know that's incorrect because my fraction is less than 1. So my number, my decimal, has to be less than 1 as well. Because remember, this is equivalent, is equal to. So doesn't mean it should be the same number in just a different form. Okay, let's do number 15. Number 15 is 4 1/10. And some of you guys are going to say, well, I have to convert this into an improper fraction, but you don't, because the 4 is a whole number. It's going to stay the same. It's going to be in your ones place. It's in your ones place here. So I'm just going to write the 4 here. Okay, then I'm going to take my calculator and I'm going to say 1 divided by 10, which I shouldn't even have to do this because it's a 10 base number. It's just 1/10. It's in the same place value holder as the tenths place. So 1 over 10 is the same thing as 0.1 or 1/10. So I'm just going to put the 1 there. I didn't have to convert the 4 and make it in a proper fraction. If I had, I could have said 10 times 4 is 40 plus 1. 41 divided by 10. And that gives me 4.1. But I don't even have to do that because my 4 is still going to be my whole number. Let's see. Let's try 8 over 25. 8 over 25. So 8 divided by 25. It looks just like it does on the paper. Hit equal. And I get 32 hundredths. So I'm going to put 0.32. And I know that it's less than 1. So that should also be less than 1. Okay, 5/9. 5 divided by 9. And I get a repeating decimal. Now, it looks like the very last number is a 6, but it's really not. It's because the calculator rounds at the last spot, and because it's 5 or more, it rounds it up. But actually, it's just 0.55555, and it goes on forever. But the calculator can't go on forever, so it just stops and rounds up. So we're going to just say 0.5 with the repeating bar. Okay, the reason you didn't see that on the 3 repeating is because the 3 doesn't round. So if you see it, anything that is repeating that's got a 5 or more on it and it rounds it up, just ignore that because it really is just a repeating decimal. Okay, I'm going to do 3 1/2. I'm going to leave the whole number 3. And 1/2, I hope you guys at this point know this, but if you don't, 1 divided by 2 is 0.5, 0.5. So all I have to do is put the 0.5 there. It doesn't repeat, so I don't need a repeating bar. And that is how you are going to convert decimals into fractions. Okay, so we have talked about converting fractions to decimals and decimals to fractions. So the next thing we're going to talk about is converting improper fractions to mixed numbers. So I'm going to get my paper, and I have, if you guys notice, all these are improper fractions, and my goal is to turn these into a mixed number because that is the form that we typically like to see things in. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to look at 10 over 6, and I say, well, okay, so if I know 6 over 6 equals 1 whole, and I know that 6 will only go into 10 one time, so I have 1 whole, and then I have from 6, 6, I would have 4, 6 left because that would be the 10. So 6, 6, which is 1 whole, plus the 4, 6 left. So that would be 1 and 4, 6. And if I was to try to flip that back around, 6 times 1 is 6, and 1 plus 4 is 10, so 10 over 6. So my answer is 1 and 4, 6. But I can simplify that because 4 and 6 will both divide evenly by 2. So I can say 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So 1 and 2/3 is actually my answer in simplest form. Okay. Number 22 says 12 over 11. So this is technically just going to be 11 elevenths plus 1 11th. Because 11 elevenths is 1 whole. And then out of that 12, you would have 1 left. So plus 1. So that's technically just 1 whole and 1 11th. And that's already simplified. Okay. On this one, 4 over 14. Well, let's see. I have 4 14ths. If I was to take 4 times 3 is as close to 14 as you can get. So 4 times 3 is 12, right? So that's 3 big ones that I'm taking out of there. And then I have from 12, 13, 14 left. So that's 2 fourths. 3 and 2 fourths. Okay. So I can check that and say 4 times 3 is 12 plus 2 is 14, 14 over 4. But I know that if 3 times 4 is 12, then I'm taking 12 out of the top, and then just 14 minus 12 is 2, and then my denominator stays the same. Now, I can simplify this and divide the 2/4 by 2 to get 1 over 2. So that means my answer is actually 3 1/2. Okay, let's look at 48 over 18. Okay, now those are pretty big numbers. So I will show you, if you have 48 over 18, and if you can do this in a calculator if you want to, because those are getting to be pretty good size. But if you have 48 over 18, you can also just see how you can simplify that. So I'm going to put 48. Well, if I put 48 divided by 18 in the calculator, it's going to give me the answer. But it's going to give me a decimal. And some of you guys are like, how am I supposed to convert that? Well, if you have a TI 30X calculator, all you have to do to convert it is hit second, and then see that F to D, that means fraction to decimal or decimal back to fraction. And it gives you the answer, 2 2/3. That little U is 2 2/3. Okay. But if you don't have that, what I would suggest doing is I would say, well, 8 and 8 both simplify by 2. And then I would try to say 4. Well, 4 won't go into 18, but you can divide 48 by 2 and 18 by 2 just to simplify the fraction just a little bit so I can work with it in smaller numbers. So half of 48 is 24, and half of 18 is 9. So this is the same fraction. I just took the 2 out, okay? So I just simplified it a little bit first. Instead of simplifying at the end, I simplified at the beginning. Now, instead of having to figure out how many 18s will go into 48, I just figure out how many 9s will go into 24. Well, 9 times 1 is 9, 9 times 2 is 18, 9 times 3 is 27, so that's too big, but I can stop at 9 times 2. So I have 9 times 2 is 18, and then from 18 to 24, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. That gives me 6, and then my denominator stays the same, 6 ninths. That 6 ninths can also simplify. You can divide 6 by 2, or by 3, sorry, and 9 by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. So let's see. Is that the answer we got a while ago? Yes. 2 2/3 is the same thing. So if you don't have a calculator to convert these, and you have big numbers, simplify your big numbers. Simplify your fraction down, and then convert it with the smaller numbers. It's easier, okay? Okay, let's see. Let's look at 36 over 24. We can do the same thing. I look at that and I know that 36 and 24, I can simplify 6 out of it. Because 6 times 6 is 36 and 6 times 4 is 24. So I have, divide that by 6, it gives you 6, and divide that by 6, it gives you 4. So 6 over 4 is way easier to work with than 36 over 24. Now I just say, how many 4s are in 6? Well, there's 1, and I would have 2 left over and 2 4s. And then I can simplify that down into 1 1/2. All right, I will do one more of these, and this one's a big one, 54 over 45. I happen to know that my 9s, and I know that I can divide 9 times 5 is 45, so I can divide 9 out, and 9 times 6 is 54. So 54 divided by 9 is 6, 45 divided by 9 is 5. And so look at there. 6/5 is way easier to turn into a mixed number than 54 over 45. So I simplified that out, and now I have 5 whole. 5 5s would be 1 whole. And then you just 6 minus 5 is 1 left. So 1 1/5, and that is simplified. Okay, so that is how you convert improper fractions to mixed numbers. Like I said, if you have a calculator, and you can do it on this calculator, it's very easy. You can just take, let's see, 72 over 45. 72 divided by 45 gives you 1.6. Okay, so I now have one whole, and then from there I can say 6/10, or I can say second fraction of decimal, and I know it's 1 3/5, which is the simplified version of 6/10. So I hope this will help with either way, any way that you've got, any resources that you have. If you have this calculator, it makes it easier. If you don't have this calculator, you can simplify it first, even with a calculator, and then convert it. Or if you just do it in your head, you can always simplify and then convert. Alrighty, so the next thing we have got, I can convert improper fractions to mixed numbers. We have done that. Now we're going to talk about multiplying and dividing, or multiplying decimals and multiplying fractions. So let's go to, we will multiply decimals first. I have a page of decimals. Now this is where, if you have a calculator, that's great. We're going to do these on a calculator. If you have a phone, you can still do these on pretty easily. Just make sure that you put the negative in. So the first thing I'm going to do, because if you guys do this on a phone, you may not have a negative on your phone. So I'm going to look at my question and I'm going to say, okay, well, there's only one negative in this whole question, so I know my answer is going to be negative. Okay, that way, if all I have is a phone and I just type in 5.4 times 8, I have 43.2, but I put my negative here, so I know that my answer is 43.2, negative 43.2. Now, if I have a calculator, I can do the negative 5.4 times 8, and that gives me the negative 43.2. So if you're doing this on a phone, make sure that you do your negatives first. These two, I have two negatives, so there's an even amount of negatives, so my answer is going to be positive, so I don't need to worry about the negatives. So I just have to type in 3.7 times 7.9, and that gives me 29.23, or 29 23 hundredths. Okay, and I don't need the negatives because an even amount of negatives makes a positive. Okay. Number 35, I have two negatives, so I know my answer is going to be positive. So 2.5 times 0.5 is going to be 1 25 hundredths. That's essentially half of 2.5. So that's what's 0.5 or half of 2.5. Okay, number 37. Number 37 is only one negative, so I'm going to put my negative out here because my answer is going to be negative. And I'm going to have 5 times 9.2, and that gives me a 46. So it is 46 even with the negative in front of it, negative 46. Okay, that is how you multiply decimals. So we have done that. Check that off the list. Now let's talk about multiplying fractions. Okay, so there again, if you have a calculator, way easier. If you don't have a calculator that converts, then I'm going to show you how to convert and multiply. Okay, so let's say that you have just a phone and you have to multiply these. So the first thing you need to do is you need to turn your mixed number into a improper fraction. So that's where we have the 8. You multiply your denominator by your whole number. 8 times 3 is 24, and then add 1, which is your numerator. So 8 times 3 is 24, plus 1 is 25. So we have 25 over 8, and that's negative, times 3 over 2. Okay, well, I know my answer is going to be a negative answer, so I'm going to go ahead and put my negative out there just so I don't forget it. Now, when you're doing this, you just simply multiply across the top of the fraction and the bottom of the fraction, okay? So I can either do it this way. 25 times 3 is 75, and 8 times 2 is 16. And then I can simplify that. Or I can say, since I have it into fraction form, I can say 25 ABC 8s times 3 ABC halves, and that gives me 4 11/16. And it's negative, remember that, negative 4 11/16. If I simplified here, I would have gotten to the same conclusion. I would have broke that down. So if I'd gotten 75 over 16, let's say you just multiplied across the top, you said 25 times 3 is 75 and 8 times 2 is 16, then I can say 75 divided by 16 gives me 4.6875 10,000ths, and that as a fraction is 4 11/16. All right. Okay. Number 42, I have, let's just do 43 here because 42 is on so I can put my calculator right here. So 43, I have two mixed numbers. So I'm going to say 5 times 2 is 10 plus 1 is 11, 11 over 2, times 6 times 1 is 6 plus 5 is 11 over 6. And this one is negative, so I know my answer is going to be negative, so I'm going to put that there. Okay, so I have 11 halves times 11/6. Now I can put this in the calculator, or I can multiply straight across the top, straight across the bottom. 11 times 11 is 121, and 2 times 6 is 12. Now, I can say 121 divided by 12. That gives me 10.083 repeating. I can turn that into a, oops, hold on. 121 divided by 12. Turn that into a mixed number, and that's 10 and 1/12. Remember, it's negative 10 and 1/12. Or you can simplify. Okay. All right. This one does not have a whole number, so we don't have to convert. I can simply multiply across the top and the bottom. I just have to be careful and make sure that my negative gets taken care of. So I have negative, I'm going to put my 1 times 9 is 9, 3 times 5 is 15, but I'm my negative up there. And I can simplify that because I know that 9 and 15 both have 3 in common. So I could either say 9 ABC 15 and make it 3/5, or I can say 9 divided by 3 and 15 divided by 3 is going to give me 3/5. Make sure you put the negative. All right, let's do one more. I'll do number 49. It's another mixed number. Okay, so if I have the calculator, I can put the whole thing in. 3 ABC 4 ABC 7 times 3 ABC 1 ABC 2. I check it to make sure it's right. And I can hit equals. And I did not put the negative in, so I need to make sure I put my negative over to the side. And that's 12 and 1/2. If I don't have this and I want to convert, I can say 3 times 7 is 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So negative 25 over 7 times 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7 halves. Okay. Now, then I can multiply across the top and across the bottom and simplify it. And I know 7 will come out of the top and the bottom because I have a 7 on top and 7 on the bottom. So if I multiply 25 times 7, I get 175. And 7 times 2 is 14. So I can simplify that. I can divide both by 7 on the top and bottom. 175 divided by 7 is just 25 again. 14 divided by 7 is just 2. Okay, which look, 25 and the 2, all I did was multiply by 7 and divide them out. I could have just canceled the 7s out and put the 25 over 2 right there. Now I'm going to convert 25 over 2. Well, I know 2 times 12 is 24, so I'm going to put negative 24 No, I'm sorry, 12. Negative 12, 2 times 12 is 24, plus one more is 1/2. There. Okay, so I have, it doesn't matter which way I do it, I still get the answer negative 12 and 1/2. All right, so we have talked about, well, got too many pages here. I can multiply decimals and I can multiply fractions. And the last thing we have to do is I can multiply fractions and decimals in real world settings. So I have pulled some of your word problems and we're just going to do a few of those. Now this one is, I believe, multiplying integers. So we are going to talk about, it says a submarine dives 20 meters. I'm just pulling one out. A submarine dives 20 meters each minute for 15 minutes. So dives is my action word, and it's going 20 meters. So it's down 20 meters each minute for 15 minutes, okay? What is the total change in depth after the 15 minutes? So I know that he's going down 20 meters, and that's in 15 minutes, right? Okay, and then another 20 meters and another 15 minutes. So I know that in order to do that, if I did that, let's see. No, that's a minute. I'm sorry. I did that wrong. So this is 1 minute. That's 20 meters. And this is another minute. And this is another 20 meters. And this is another minute. And this is another 20 meters. So he's going down, right? And so if I did that 15 times, then I would get my answer. So it gave you 20 meters in the 15 minutes, and you should multiply to get the total change. But the 20 is going to be negative because it's going down. And then the 15 has got to be positive because it's time, and time is always positive, time and distance. So now I just multiply negative 20 times 15, and that's going to give me negative 300. So negative 300 meters in 15 minutes. Okay? So ignore that one. I was wrong on that one at the very beginning. So it's 1 minute's 20 meters, another minute's 20 meters, another minute's 20 meters. So if we did that 15 times, we would count our 20s and we would get 300. Okay? Question number 3. A stock loses $1.50 each day over a 5-day period. What is the total change in the value of stock at the end of the 5 days? Okay, so loses is our action word that says that the money amount is going down, right? Over, and it says each day, so that means that's part of like 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, whatever. And it's a 5-day period. What is the total change and the value after the end of the 5 days? So if we lose $1.50 a day times 5 days, 1.50, a loss of $1.50 times the 5 days, and we know it's multiplied because it gives you 2 parts. It gives you the each day and how many days. So how much you're losing for each day times how many days. So now you have 1.50 times 5, and that's going to give you 7.5. So it's actually negative, okay? So I'm going to write negative. It says, what is the total change in the value of the stock? So it's negative, not just 7.5, but $7.50 at the end of 5 days. Okay, so that tells me what it is. So $7.50 at the end of 5 days. Okay, so that's how you're going to do your multiplication problems. So we have done a couple multiply problems. Now let's do some division problems. So it says Miss Phillips bought 1.5 pounds of ground beef from Kroger. She paid a total of $6.75 for the ground beef. What is the price per pound? Okay, so if I didn't know this is division, I would say, well, she got 1.5 pounds, okay? She bought 1.5 pounds. She paid a total of, and it says a total, right? So that means $6.75 was the total amount of money that she paid. And then the question says, what is the price per pound? So it's saying, I'm giving you the total. I'm giving you how much it is altogether, and I want you to divide this out to see how much I actually paid per pound. Okay? So we're going to say $6.75 divided by 1.5. Okay, and you don't really have to put the dollar sign in the problem. I just happen to. There is nothing in here that suggests negative. When it says paid, it is negative, but it's not really requiring you to put a negative in this question because it's just asking what the price per pound was, and it's not negative money. So it's going to be $6.75. 75 cents divided by 1.5, and that gives me 4.5. Okay. So she is paying $4. What is it? 4.5. $4.50 per pound. And if we think about that, it makes sense because 1 pound would be she's paid $6.75. I mean, you've got 1 pound, 1.5 pounds, so $4.50, and then another half of $4.50 would be close to $6.75. So that would be correct. Okay. And so, like I said, there's no negatives in this one because there's nothing in it to really represent negative. Okay, let's look at number 5. It says it took Mr. Phillips 1.6 hours to run 13.2 miles. What was his average speed? There again, these really also are not negative problems. So we're going to say it took Mr. Phillips 1.6 hours. So that's a positive number because time was always positive, and then distance is always positive too. So he ran 13.2 miles. And I don't know if you guys know that, but that's like that's a marathon, 13.2 miles, or it's half marathon. 13.1, I believe, is half marathon. So that's close to a marathon. Okay, what is his average speed? And so when it's asking you what his average speed is, that means how much did he do, how much did he run per mile, okay? Or per hour. So miles per hour. So if it's miles per hour, we're going to put 13.2 miles divided by the 1.6 hours, because you want miles per hour. So the miles has to be first or be on top, because if you were doing it as a fraction, it would be 13.2 divided by 1.6. So that's how you set it up as a fraction. Okay, and then you divide it. 13.2 divided by 1.6, and that gives you 8.25. So he ran 8.25 miles per hour. Now, if you wanted hours per mile, you would have to put the hours divided by the miles. But the miles per hour is what it asks for, or average speed, so it wants it in miles per hour. So the miles has to be first, divided by the hours. That's a tricky question because it does not have, it's hard to decipher which one you should put on top. But just remember, if it says miles per hour, miles goes first. Okay. Question number 6 is how many nickels are in $24? Okay, so, and that looks like you're like, well, there's not enough information for that question, but technically a nickel is worth 5/100ths of a dollar. So if with that prior information, we can figure out how many nickels are in $24. If there's a total 24, we're going to divide it by 5 cents a piece. So we start with the $24 divided by the 5 cents. Okay, neither one of these are negative as well. So I think these problems more focus on the division of the decimals instead of the positive and the negatives. That's okay, but you got to know how to do all kinds of questions. So we're going to say 24 divided by not just 0.5, because that's 50 cents, 0.05. And you get 480. So that means there's 480, what are we looking for? Nickels and $24. 480 nickels in $24. Okay. All right, I will stop there. That's 3 division questions. And I think these were more about division of decimals, and it doesn't really refer as much to the positive and negatives, but it's just having you look at the words and pick out which number goes on top that you would divide by whichever number was your bottom that you divided by. Okay, so these, I hope this helps. You guys have had instruction on several things. The 2 videos in the beginning that you watched of Math Annex videos, and now you have the fractions. I can multiply by fractions and decimals in real world settings. We've covered all of these learning targets in this 40-minute video, so hope it wasn't too boring, and I will see you soon. Have a good day.